at the North Precinct Police Advisory Council and enjoy a discussion with them on park issues as well. And know that people who are concerned about public safety in their neighborhoods and communities are equally concerned about safety in our local parks. So I'll tell you a little bit about myself. Christopher Williams. I'm the acting superintendent of Seattle Parks. In fact, I grew up right up the street. I'm a Chief Sealth graduate, graduated back in 1982. So this is home for me, and have lots of fond memories of being a 12, 13, 14-year-old, getting on my bike, riding down to Lincoln Park and spending the whole day in the park as a kid. And then later on in life, just enjoy long parks all over West Seattle. So we live in a pretty special place because we have a great park system. This park system was established back in 1887, making this a 128-year-old park and recreation system. It's one of the finest park systems in the country, and that's not just hyperbole. I'm saying that because there are lots of measurements that we use to sort of measure what a truly great park system is. And a lot of it has to do with sort of the access to parks. In almost every neighborhood, our parks are within 10 minutes of walking to every resident in the city of Seattle. Parks are adjacent to 13,000 households. That's about 50,000 people who live next door to a park in the city. Parks are sort of diffused all throughout the community. Whenever you have a situation where you have a place as prevalent as parks throughout the community, you're going to see the same kinds of behaviors in parks as you would in any other place in the public domain. Sidewalk, street, parks are not exempt places for illegal or even nuisance behaviors. What makes this system special, as I mentioned, not only is it 128 years old, but it is one of 5 fully built out homestead park systems across the country. Frederick Plum Homestead was a landscape architect, actually one of the first people ever to hold the title of landscape architect, and he laid down the foundation of this park system back in 1903. It was a big deal because the city council at that time spent $10,000 to have a landscape architect all the way from Brookline, Massachusetts, come here to Seattle to do a design or a plan for the park. So when you look at the neighborhoods across the city and where the city has grown up, from the years of 1903, when the plan was laid down for the system, to about 1910, there were about 80,000 people in the city back in 1903. And by the year 1910, there were some 120,000 people in the city. So our neighborhoods have literally grown up around our parks. Some of our most affluent neighborhoods across the city are adjacent to parks. When you look at the Gold Coast, which is Seward Park, Alki, Lincoln Park, these are community treasures and jewels in our city. But we're here to talk about public safety as it relates to the park system. But I wanted to give you a little bit of context of how special this park system really is. So we know that there are 3 factors that influence illegal behavior in parks. One is how well the park is maintained. We work very closely with SPD. We practice Superintendent principles, crime prevention, engineering, and design. We have a great working relationship with Lieutenant Paulson, Lieutenant Peter Davis, and in fact the entire police command. Very good working relationship. So I say that to say that there's a lot of communication that happens between our departments. We are not siloed. We collaborate, we work together closely. So I mentioned that there were 3 factors that influence legal behavior in a park. One is maintenance, how densely the park is vegetated, whether or not we can get in there and prune, trim, whether or not we've adopted the SEPTED standards or recommendations as we've heard from SPD, whether or not there are inherent design factors for that park that make the park a safe place for people to hide out and engage in illegal activities. So maintenance is a big deal. The other factor that we know influences illegal activity in parks is park activation. So are there legitimate recreational activities for people to do? Is the park vibrant? Is it activated? Do people like going there? Are there athletic fields? Are there lights? Are there ball games in the afternoon? I mean, you don't see that stuff happening in parks. And one of the big indicators of whether a park is safe or not is the number of women and children that go to the park. Women and children, small children don't go to a park. Women with small children don't go places that are perceived not to be safe. So that's one of the things we look at, is who's using our parks. And we ask the question, why aren't they using the parks if we don't see that? The other factor that we know influences illegal activity in parks is really, so if you think about this as a three-legged stool, you think about activation, maintenance, you've got safety. Safety and security is a big part of that three-legged stool. And the relationship we have with SPD is how we get at the public safety component of parks. I would add a fourth leg to this stool, and that would be you, the citizen. We can't have safe parks if the people who visit those parks, and who live next door to the parks, don't pick up the phone and call 911 when they see illegal activity in the parks. We can't have safe parks if people aren't willing to pay attention, keep their eyes open, and report suspicious activities and suspicious behavior. All four of those things contribute to the safety of the park. We know that we have some parks in West Seattle that you have expressed concern to us about. Lincoln Park. But the reality is for a park as big as Lincoln Park is, and Carol and I were just talking about this, it's a big park, but the frequency of illegal incidents and activity in that park are relatively low proportional to the size of that park. We know that there have been concerns about Roxville Park, and of course Alki Beach during the summer months, and the cruising, and just how do you manage all that activity there? And then Miqueloots. So after being here for a few minutes, I'm going to pause right there, because I think what we wanted to accomplish here is an opportunity for you to ask us questions about the parks, for you to ask us what are we doing by way of maintenance, activation, do we have any strategies working with SPD, are there any SEPTED strategies? And I brought along Robert Stowers and Carol Baker, who probably between them have over 100 years of park and recreation management experience. And that's an exaggeration. So why don't I pause right there and give you folks an opportunity for us to have a discussion.
Hi, I live along Longfellow Creek and Village Park, and there's been so much illegal activity there in terms of drugs and drinking and kids partying, and there's been significant damage to it, to different parts of it. And recently I've noticed within the last maybe 3 or 4 months that there's been a lot of effort to cut down a lot of the brush. A lot of the brush and a lot of the trees that would have hit that. Is it the perception of your department that that's helping, or that's going to help it a lot? Because there's areas where, especially that little area, there's areas where you can go, 100 feet, and nobody, just because of the way the land dips down, nobody can see you. And, I've stopped and kicked out people doing all sorts of things over, over the time. And it seems to me that along 26 especially, you see a lot of people who don't seem like nature lovers that go into that part of the park. I also think seeing what I would believe to be quite a bit of prostitution happening there. Is that sort of what your perspective is from seeing the amount of detritus?
Well, I think what we try to do is try to cut back the brush and try to get trees as much as possible so that SPD or citizens can see from the street level with just more clear line that people, but like Christopher said, when people see things, they have to call SPD.
Right.
But we're
very noticeable. I will say it's very, very noticeable.
One of the things we're doing that is really effective in helping to sort of stem the tide of illegal behavior in our green belts and natural areas is we've been in a partnership with the Cassidy Land Conservancy to restore green belts and natural areas, basically going in there, rooting out the ivy and repopulating the urban forest area with conifers and replanting the area. And those areas where we've seen lots of volunteer hours go into the reforestation, it has had the effect of displacing the illegal activity. So volunteerism, volunteer activity in parks creates a condition. So there are lots of positive people there in the park engaging in some legitimate work, and people who are engaged in illegal activity don't want to be around those people.
Are you connected to North Village Community Council?
I've been quite a few times, yeah.
But basically, they got their start around those issues in respect to that park, maybe 5-6 years ago.
Is that actually a city park, or is it just considered a green belt?
No, it's a city park. I mean, Greg Davis and Longfellow Creek, that's part of the Millennium Project, and where they were federally mandated to clean it up. Is my understanding, it's a very important watershed.
Yeah.
And tremendous amount of wildlife habitat, tremendous, because of where it is. It's right, it's adjacent to Camp Long and the golf course.
It goes all the way from Yancey up to Roxtown.
Well, I guess I've done it with big volunteer effort for the section that's right by the high school. And I know there's always been a lot of trouble with vandalism and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had the same problems, and sometimes, there's been some issues about calling, the police, and I mean, I've called many a time, and, there's gang activities there, and a lot of times it's just juveniles who think that they have a right to get drunk and party and, smoke dope there, and rip up the signs and destroy, so, but one of my bigger concerns too is that, what about the broken glass and the bottles? I mean, is that taken care of over time? I mean, is that part of the maintenance plan?
So I think one of the things I was going to touch on
Yeah, sorry.
is the ability of Seattle Parks right now to respond at an in-depth level to maintenance. In the past 3 or 4 budget cycles, we've cumulatively seen maybe $17 million in cuts, which is pretty significant to any organization. And what that forces Carol to have to do is to prioritize how she uses her limited resources to get the biggest bang for the buck. So does she deploy her team to, maybe go do some of the things that don't have the greatest bang for the buck from sort of the public perception of cleanliness of parks, like keeping the turf mowed, the garbage empty, the litter picked up. One of the things about our park system and our maintenance is we are maintaining our parks to a clean, safe standard. So what that means is that you might not see detailed shrubbing. You might not see edging and trimming and that sort of thing at the level that you would see if our funding were different. So that's just kind of one of the realities we're in right now, and it makes the challenge very difficult to try to go out and respond to the broken glass here and there. We'd really like to do that. But it's just, Carol making those choices every day about bang for the buck.
Yeah, the other thing, on the example we gave, we had some calls on entrance around Davis Park, and we will concentrate on entrances, trying to help people feel safe. But we do respond to the calls. And then the other thing is that we count on volunteers. We have regular walkers that call us. We have park stewards for many of the areas on Longfellow, and we depend on them. Sometimes they pick up glass and other things as part of their weekend projects, but they alert us because we don't have somebody that's going out every day on Longfellow Creek, for example.
Well, and actually, probably walking with my dog, every other day, or, one end or the other. So that's the only reason that I probably see as much as I see.
Yeah, if you see, give us a call, and we'll
Sure.
get down, we may not get down that day, it depends.
And also, apparently at the end of, or the south end of that, where the city electric, Seattle, they've had a big problem with theft out of that transfer station, which I've seen. So that's kind of another big issue too, isn't it? Where they work in conjunction with you? Or they work. Yeah, okay.
Coordinate. But if you give us a call, you may not get to it like Carol said right away, but we will get to it. And in fact, a lot of my staff, sometimes they have to hold me back and say, Rob, we can't tell everything. But we have good communication and we get things done.
Can I just clarify one thing? In Seattle parks, it is illegal to drink
Yes.
alcohol, is that correct?
That is
Flat out,
correct.
it's illegal, doesn't
Flat
matter
out.
what it's in,
That's
it's illegal to smoke marijuana.
That's right.
Even if it's legal to smoke marijuana, if you've got a prescription, it's illegal to smoke it in a park, is that correct?
That's right.
Okay.
So let's talk about that.
I've had that argument with some people.
So about a year and a half ago, we went through a process where we created a code of conduct for the entire sales tax system. Basically, what we did was take the existing Seattle Municipal Code 18.12, This is a section in the SMC that covers all of the illegal activity in the park system. And we consolidated that under one document, took that to the Board of Park Commissioners, and have that declared a code of conduct for all of Seattle parks. So the rules are consolidated. You don't have to go thumbing around for them. They are very easy to find. And the only thing we added to the code of conduct was the smoking, the prohibition against smoking in parks. But all the rules are there. And we did that with the idea that it makes it easier for neighbors to go onto our website, print out the code of conduct, and you have a list of illegal behaviors. So everything from when you hear amplified sound in a park, you need a permit for that. If someone erects a structure in a park, you need a permit for that. If you have an event in a park with more than 50 people, you need a permit for that. The rules are pretty straightforward, and they are not as obscure as people, I think, try to allege that they are. So I encourage you to go to our website and take a look.
Yeah, well, in regards to budget shortfall, I've seen the group King County inmates doing landscaping, especially around the kids with blogs. What about getting them out and everything, do brush clearing?
Okay, so now you've entered into our bargaining unit, kind of wages, hours, working condition, kind of stuff. So we, in the park department, have 38 different labor organizations that represent employees of the park department who engage in everything from graphic design work, project management work, landscape architect work, to park maintenance. And one of the challenges we have sometimes is, the public knows about our budget challenges, and the response to that on every blog or every newspaper article, whenever there's a story about the budget situation in parks, is there's this huge expression by the public, the desire to volunteer. And it's not just members of the public, but it's companies, it's businesses who want to give their time to the park system. And we need to figure out how to balance sort of our labor contract language with work that is legitimate bargaining unit work with an employee in their work unit rather than labor organization. But we're doing some creative things, and we are pushing the envelope on volunteer activity because it is the one leveraging factor that the public comes to us and says, we can make a difference here. We've gotten away from the core crew in the last few years just because parks are a kid-centric place, and we need to be sure that anybody doing work in parks sort of meets our background check requirements and the whole 9 yards. So We're talking to the municipal court about how to do that for non-violent offenders and for a lower level of offender class. And you can see that sometimes.
Okay, is that considered community service?
That would be considered community service.
I was curious about how the safety of Lincoln Park on the waterfront at night. I'm just curious if that would be, how often is there crime down there? Or is that a regular patrol place or, you know?
So, good question. Larger parks, just because of their size, are easier to manage, to regulate behavior. A smaller park is much tougher to manage behaviors and for a lot of reasons. A park the size of Lincoln Park, I said earlier, proportionate to its size, we don't get a lot of reports of illegal behavior, illegal activity. We did go through a process here not too long ago where we adopted new hours of operation for our parks, really recognizing that, you know, even in the summer, it gets dark probably around 10 o'clock. After 10 o'clock, we kind of question the legitimacy of an individual wanting to be in the park after 10. So I haven't heard a lot about safety and security issues as they relate to access along Lincoln Park there. But when I was growing up, Lincoln Park was a place where high school kids would gather and drink beer and whole 9 yards.
You want us to step in on that very quick?
Sure.
We're out here in
Go for
Elizabeth.
it.
Lincoln Park in the summertime and during spring break, all the young kids like to go down there and drink. And just like kids have done, you know, even when I was growing up, you know, back in the 70s. The thing is, we haven't had any reports of crime other than the kids drinking. Most of the complaints arise from noise from the people that live near the park. And when they're down there restaurants, we can't park as part of our regular thing at night. And it's like herding cats sometimes down there because they got their little escape routes. They'll park their cars in different places and they'll hike in. And we get our weekly calls from the neighborhood saying, you know, they were at it again. So it's, like I say, it's like herding cats. But as far as actually crime, dangerous crime, no, it's just nuisance type stuff with kids.
Okay, so like if I were on a hike down there alone, let's say.
You know, actually, any place, anywhere, you just want to use good common safety things, because a lot of times people get wired into their, you know, their iPods or iPads, whatever they call them, or some other type of thing to where they're distracted, not aware of their surroundings. And we always encourage people just to walk with a friend or in a well-lit, open area. And, you know, getting some of these parks are beautiful with the greenscape, and they got the nature trails. That's always good probably to walk with somebody or you know, just, I would probably want to be with somebody going through there. So that's with any place in Seattle, it could be third and pine. So
That's good advice.
Along the Lincoln Park line, I haven't been down there at night for a while, but I volunteer for solicitors, and sometimes we need to stay, you know, a little bit after dark. But I was down at the north end of Lincoln Park. There's virtually no lighting down there. Is there any plans to put lighting down there? There's just nothing. It's dark. There's one light that was flickering that night.
Okay. So along that street right of way as it enters the park,
No, down on the waterfront.
down the waterfront.
Yeah, there's parking, there's lights all around the camping of the picnic areas. Then you get north, and there's just nothing.
You know, we have about $250 million, $300 million of deferred capital maintenance. That's one of the challenges in the park system. And with that, there's absolutely no plan to install lighting. I've got some cards here too.
But if you have a flickering light, let us know.
Yeah.
We don't have staff that go out at night, and we depend on you guys calling. And sometimes, we've had times when the clocks weren't going on properly, and we didn't know until someone called.
It was several months ago, so I haven't been out there at night.
I was wondering, does the Sears family still have the pool? They live there at the Lincoln Park. It's a Lawrence H. Coleman pool. And they, from the time it was opened up in 41, I knew the family, but I don't know about now, but they lived there, and they were right at Williams Point, and whether they're still part of it. There was a, like I say, they lived right above the pool.
Yeah.
And that there was a Sears, and I remember going from High Point, because there was 30 of us would go on a drove down there, and the pool was free in those days, you know, it was a saltwater pool. And one other thing, I know that you can't do it, they can't live in the Stone Age, but I remember picnics in the 50s down there when there was more liquor from the Italian club or whatever, and there was city councilmen down there for the High U Festival, and there was enough liquor that we, like that, right out on picnic tables, and nobody said boo about it. Now, you don't dare light up a cigarette. I remember my great, we got pictures. Every guy had a cigar and pipes, and now you better not exhale. But yet there's guys that go up in the shrubs and do stuff like Captain Paulson said. So, you know, I mean, I know I'm living in the Stone Age, but
We love having you here, Mike.
and by the way, most of the guys in my gang like that, they hey, get out of here. This is our house. You know, they got their own little cache, you see. So, but anyway, but do they still maintain that pool? They do?
Yeah. So Carol, you want to say anything about it?
Well, the pool's under renovation right now. They're trying desperately to get it open by June.
Yeah. But right at the Williams, at the pool,
The
that,
Sears family's still
oh
there.
God, they had, I saw a picture of Jack Henderson going in the dive, and this is before Pearl Harbor. I wasn't born then until after the war, but no, they had some top people like the Denny family and that came to that dedication of that thing, you know, and so.
Have you been down for?
Not for several years. I just don't get down there.
They've got a water slide now. Just one.
Oh, God, I didn't see that when I was there.
This is, you know, not necessarily a human security problem, but it could be. There's a tremendous amount of coyotes up in Camp Long. And I mean, a tremendous amount. I've seen them in almost what looks like packs, and I don't know. Does that present a problem for humans? I mean, there's lots of kids.
So one of the things we have done, we have had everything from cougars at Discovery Park, to coyotes. And there was a situation here about a year and a half ago where a coyote ate someone's cat or small dog. We've had reports of bears in Seward Park, although those are unsubstantiated.
They're alligators in the sewers, though, right?
Yeah, I can't see a bear catching a cab at Seward Park. Wonder how they got there. But urban wildlife is a serious issue. I think the more we densify as a city, the more urban wildlife is challenged to sort of coexist with us. In the past, what we've done are workshops for the community to basically teach people how to live with urban wildlife, because the department is not going to trap them. We're not going to try to contain them. They're regulated by the Department of Fish and Wildlife. So the best pathway forward is to make sure we're educating our neighbors. And maybe that's something, Robert, we should look into to figure out how we can get some of those workshops to occur at Camp Long.
Well, it's not so much that it's a problem. I'm just wondering, is it potentially a problem? I mean,
Yes.
coyotes,
It's been a problem other places in the system.
have they been known to attack humans at all, or is that, or like
No.
he would walk dogs, or he would walk?
We need to stay away from them.
Yeah, we won't allow them to small pets.
Okay, but for the most part, I mean, I've literally seen, and coyotes are not packed,
Right.
you know, but I've seen so many up in Camp Long. Literally, you know what I mean, as much as 6 or 7 together in a group, you know, we're not talking, you know, dogs or feral dogs or something like that. That I'm wondering if they're just so crowded up there.
Well, they're
Habitat wise.
and you will see packs when the young ones are going
Oh, I
out
see.
trying to find an alternative. That's when you
Okay.
generally see. And they're not as good a hunters, so they're a little bit more aggressive than.
But we see coyotes, you know, I mean, up in Pitchy Point, right next to the
Oh, I
Long Spring
I see them on
because
my-
we
I've seen
lose cats up there all the time.
Yeah,
I've seen a coyote less than 4 blocks from me.
Oh, yeah.
He
No,
ran right through DCQ's
I see them on my street, and my house backs up on the golf course, so I hear them every night. And that's not my issue. The issue is that within a fairly isolated park place, like if you're walking through, which I go through Camp Long quite a bit, you know, there are parks where you're not likely to see anybody, and I've seen so many coyotes. I'm just wondering that if they, you know what I mean, is there certain times of the year, you know what I mean? Or has anybody reported actually any attacks on humans or kids or?
Not so much on humans, but
Yeah.
on small
My wife wants
animals.
to figure out how to do it with the front one.
Can I get back to parks? I live in Arbor Heights area in the Ocean View district, and we have what we consider a pocket park, the Seal Beach wetland. And several years ago, the park department took that over, and I won't even go into details what was happening down there. Because of the people of that community, I know the police probably got tired of us calling, but between the neighbors and us going down and cleaning it up and everything, we've tried to keep that park halfway, you know, decent. But what I want to ask you is, you just said something that we're supposed to have a permit if there's more than 50 people in a park. Would that consider my Easter egg hunt?
So, let me be clear about that. So, what the policy says and then what happens in practice may be different. So, technically, if there is an event that's not sponsored by Seattle Park and Recreation, we're not a sponsor or a partner to the event, then technically for an event of 50 or more people, you need a special event permit from the park department. Now, that probably rarely will rise to the level of the attention of the department, as long as there are not significant traffic impacts. So, you don't have 50 people parking in the neighborhood and disrupting traffic flows and that sort of thing.
Okay, well,
Never hear about that.
That's okay. Well, then you already answered my question about lighting,
Okay.
because we have no lights down there except for the street lights on Review Drive. And as you go back into that park, it's pitch black.
Is this the park with the ravine and the creek?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
And,
A lot of good volunteer work there.
yeah, and right now they're taking out all the non-native plants and putting, you know, native plants in, but the lighting, we probably never get really.
Lighting is a tough thing.
Maybe you can be a benefit, apply for a grant. In my neighborhood, we have Fairmount Park, which is on Fauntleroy. And it's a lot of use there with soccer and different games like that. But the real concern, I think, is the abandoned school building, which it would be very nice if that could some way or other become part of the park system. And I realize it would be a burden financially, but it would be great for the neighborhood to have some indoor play area for kids in the winter and different things like that. And I have had one concern since, and maybe not the thing on that an awful lot of activities going on around the school, and I imagine in that end of the park. But I did suggest that he call 911 whenever he sees anyone there and have them check it out.
So I think you're absolutely right. Abandoned schools attract nuisances for illegally. One of the things that I think is refreshing about what's happening in Seattle, Seattle historically has ranked like number 29 on a list of 30 nationwide metropolitan areas with the fewest numbers of kids over the age of 18 living at home. So the character of the city is really a city that has a lot of young people and lots of adults. It looks like we're beginning to buck that trend as Seattle Public Schools is planning for an additional 20,000 new kids to be enrolled in the public school system over the next 3-year period. So what that says is that a lot of these schools that are mothballed will be reactivated. I think that would address some of the problems that are brought back on the schools. Yeah.
I would also make a comment about the wildlife situation. I think that a lot more cats are killed by raccoons. But if you look outside all these parks, you'll find jungles of blackberries and all that. And we have an alley south of us that hasn't been to survive. Plus, we have an inordinate amount of garbage available to eat. So basically, if we don't clean up our act, but on top of this, we're in their spaces. They were there first.
My name's David Singer, and I live across the street from Riverview Playfield.
Can you speak up? I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I'm David Singer, and I live across the street from Riverview Playfield. That is considered a park.
Yes.
Right. And I think with coyotes, a lot of the reasons they're, I mean, I saw one from here to there, that close to me, and I think it's because people feed them so much. And they think of them as little things instead of scaring them away. And I think that's a lot of the problems with the coyote. And you mentioned about women and children walking around. Well, a lot of these parks don't have a bathroom for the women. The guy, no big deal with the guys, but women don't, and children don't have a place to go to the bathroom in a lot of those parks. I think that's a lot of the reasons that you don't see more women and children. It's not my opinion, but
yeah, that's a big problem in our downtown parks. And what happens when you have a large homeless transient population and there are no restrooms? So that's a huge problem.
Does Parks Department have any sort of a plan for 4th of July and the ever-present incendiary devices that are being set off? I mean, literally, I've walked through Lincoln Park on like the 5th and seen the ground littered, in dry years too. What's up with that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Officer Davis will remember in southeast Seattle when we have been across the spectrum on how to cope with sort of illegal fireworks discharges in parks, from doing everything from closing out the parks for the 4th of July to blocking out comfort stations. Comfort stations are outdoor bathrooms in parks. People go into those comfort stations, put fireworks in the toilet, like to blow them up and set them off. Lots of vandalism happens in the park system on the 4th of July. There are no good answers. On the one hand, closing a park just punishes people who want to go to that park and use it legitimately. So we've tried to steer away from closures because they unfairly penalize the majority of the public. The reality is that we do staff our parks on the 4th of July. It's a big overtime day typically for people who work in the park system. But we, again, rely on neighbors when they see that stuff to call 911.
Did the neighbors get fined? Because I've called on, neighbors down the street that were, sending off. And in my neighborhood, there's been homes that have been burned down to the ground. And I've caught kids, on dry years, setting off all sorts of stuff in the woods. And is anybody ever fined? Because I think if we started literally finding people.
Actually, they are. Everyone knows that having the fireworks here in Seattle is illegal. Not supposed to happen. But yet, every year we see it. It looks like the big root on the 4th of July. And when we catch them and we get them, we confiscate the fireworks and put them in evidence and what have you. And those individuals are fined. But it's just so much of it. It is an extreme drain on the resources to send every police officer to discern between the fireworks and the actual gunshots and things like that, to go out and start dealing with all the fireworks. We really have to be a student. We have to listen to see what's going on. And we have everybody that we could possibly put out on the 4th of July. And just like Mr. Williams said, it is a huge overtime burden. It really, really is. Because you have so many resources out there to deal with the situation out there. But we do. We find them. Fire departments out in droves as well, because that's a big day for them as well. They're trying to keep people's property safe as well as save lives out there, just like the police department is. But yeah, they are being fined, but it is a huge problem.
Is it a significant fine?
Oh, it's significant enough. But then the neat thing is, these individuals go out and spend thousands of dollars on this stuff. And just for us to get taken away. And there are times that we are facilitated with a big down drunk. And oftentimes you'll see police stations with those things, 2 and 3, we used to just have one, now we have 2 and 3, and they're under lock and key. We have to take them down to our range and contact our fraud explosives individuals, just so we can bring those things safe. After a while, it gets dangerous even to house those things in the police precinct. So, but it's a lot of fireworks out there, and we do confiscate.
Can I just say, though, I called 4th of July this year, and the operator told me, like, unless they're pointing the fireworks at someone, you're kind of wasting our time.
That's happened to me too.
Call anyways, because we really want to know, we don't want to see anybody's house get caught on fire. We don't want to see any people's fingers getting blown off because they're out there haphazardly using these things. So call, I encourage you to call anyhow, but they are going to prioritize those calls.
I understand, and I wasn't, hysterical about it. Just,
Of course.
that was the comment that was made to me, unless they're being fired at someone.
I hate to be crass, but we're going to call anyways because it's a matter of public safety.
Yeah.
So please do. Okay.
Lieutenant Davis told you to call.
I think the other thing is that, as Christopher said, it's a huge overtime period. We're trying to deliver customer service to all the people that are in the parks, down picnics, picking up thousands and tons of litter. We're covering all our fields, especially our synthetic fields, which cost millions of dollars. We can't have them broken. So we're out there trying to deliver customer service so people can have a good time in the holidays. But our staff is also cognizant and they call in 911 when they see things like that.
The one thing, and maybe this is just kind of a suggestion or not, what if there was a really concerted PR plan? You know what I mean, for people to really understand the kind of damage and what it costs them and everybody in the long run, as opposed, because I don't remember ever seeing anything like that. I mean, everybody knows it's illegal and blah, 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 but I never see anything on, you know what I mean, I don't see any advertisements, I don't see any, what if there was, a really concerted PR effort? Would that, in the long run, maybe raise public consciousness and reduce, the carnage?
Is there going to be a July 4th show this year?
I don't know. There will more than likely be a show on Lake Union, but there hasn't been a show on Elliott Bay for a couple of years.
That's going to be determined, especially events that they try to sponsor. That's willing to do that. And we've been going through that for a couple of years now. The sponsor basically comes up and says they are willing to do it. The city will put that on, an assistant will put that on. But other than that, no.
Just look over this way.
Yeah, when I was looking at High Point though, one of the things that I would do every 4th of July is, remind people you cannot have fireworks in High Point or Grand Mesa or wherever I was looking in the house authority. And this is where you can go if you want to watch the fireworks.
Well, watch the news because they have broadcasting. There is public service announcements regarding fireworks and safety issues and things like that. So there's.
I'm just saying if there was a really big, this is what it costs, and this is what it costs everybody, the taxpayers, and the ERs. It was really, because it's just never, I've never seen anything that made an impression on me personally, and I'm pretty.
I think the biggest impression that everyone really understands is when they took the ability for Seattle to have fireworks, period. That's quite an impression.
Really?
That pretty much is the measure of
well, everybody knows that it's illegal because you have to go out into the county to buy it.
You've got to go to the,
Well, Mr. Williams, so let's stick to the parks here, first of all. Anyone have any park questions?
I just wondered, the Seattle Center isn't public park. Is it under a separate?
It is under a separate operating department, and while it is a park, it is not part of Seattle Park and Recreation. It's its own department.
I have hours worth of questions and comments, suggestions. I try not to forget that I was young once too, and that I'm not going to be the first person to throw a stone. That a lot of the things are happening in the park, but I try to make up for it now. Whenever I walk, I take a bag and I pick up garbage. I go to the green belt and I pick up garbage from broken glass to paper to needles. And, you know, I'm not above that. And to me, it's just payback for when I was a kid, when either I didn't care, which really isn't the thing. It wasn't a big deal when in my time. But, you know, regarding a lot of that junk, some of it's done when adults are present. And I think a lot of children, all children learn from example. And when they're not picking up junk when, like a ball game or something, and stuff gets thrown away, when the adults that are there don't say anything or do something about it, it becomes an okay thing to do. And again, live by example. And so, I mean, I hope the stuff that I pick up, if somebody sees it, is a good example, and there's no reason why the public can't become volunteers without having to sign a paper and say, I'll volunteer to do this, otherwise I'm not going to. And if it was something that was taught in schools, to be more concerned at a younger age and not wait till we become adults and then all of a sudden we're concerned about all this stuff.
So that's an excellent point, and thank you for sort of your informal volunteer activity in our parks. One of the things that when you look at a map of Seattle, you compare us to 15 other cities roughly our size. One of the things that jumps out is Seattle is a very dense city. We have a very small land mass. Parks comprise about 10% of the city's land mass total. If you look at a city like New York or Chicago, the density level on a per park basis is about 4.1. What that suggests is that for every 1,000 people, they have roughly 4.1 acres of park land. In Seattle, we have roughly 8.1 acres of park land. We have a smaller system, denser city, trying to serve more people in our park system. So part of the challenge here is sort of a density challenge as we densify, as we become more urbanized. You know, we need to sort of observe some polite, respectful uses of the parks, particularly considering how densely they're being packed together. I think it's really important. You know, basic civility, kind of the stuff you learn in Sunday school, is really important. It's really important.
Before you go, I did want to touch on one thing. You mentioned Roxville Park as being one of your more troublesome areas. As you're aware, Metro Trans is going to put a rapid-wide station right next door, even though it violates every concept of SEPT. So have they been consulting with you to make any changes to the park?
We haven't heard a word about it. Carol and Robert, have you guys heard anything about that? That's something we can go back and look into.
There's going to be homicides at the park and assaults, and it seemed not to be the best place to locate a transit center.
Okay.
And there's really no lighting in the park. It's very dark.
So I really appreciate the invitation to come here and meet folks and talk about our great park system. I really appreciate your interest in the park system and your stewardship, eyes on the park, as it were. So thank you, and I've passed around that card. Feel free to get in touch with me directly, or you may call Carol or Robert. They'll pass their cards around. Otherwise, thank you.